There it is. All right. So what's in it for you? Talking a little bit about personal branding. Well, on the slide, maybe you would like to promote yourself, a promotion at work, or you want to learn actionable things to help other people advance, maybe the junior staff under you or your clients. Maybe you've seen other people be picked, maybe over you, and you would like to ask, why not me? Perhaps you're looking for reputation enhancement, maybe enriching personal, professional opportunities in the future, build your networking, or just to build your professional skills toolbox. So there's kind of a lot of reasons to think about your personal brand and kind of be fostering it. So of course, every webinar has the foundations. The chat is moderated, so please do ask away. Chances are in my next breath, I'm going to answer the question that might have hatched in your head. So we will have time for Q&A at the end. What happens here stays here. And what we mean by that is, although it is recorded, you can definitely leave your camera off if you don't want to be recorded. But if you ever have a personal question at the end, I stop the recording and then we can stay later to talk one-on-one. Or if you want to kind of get into anything in more detail, I'm absolutely available one-on-one after the presentation. And California Workforce Connection, as an entire statewide organization, and Puerto del Sol locally, has a calendar full of interesting and useful workshops. So I encourage you to flex your muscles and either be part of or attend all kinds of other different workshops. So we've already learned to annotate, so we're going to annotate one more time. Well, good or bad, when you think of personal branding, what kinds of things are we thinking about? So you want to click that annotate button and get that text box up. And I'd like you to put a couple of, words up. What are you thinking when you hear about personal branding? At first, I thought about manipulation. I wasn't sure if it was like kind of embellishing. Like, am I, kind of thinking of it more as sort of a nefarious thing? So you grab your annotate button and then click text. Maybe you could be thinking about kind of selling yourself. Yep, absolutely. Can I throw money at this problem? Right? Absolutely. So just kind of some of the initial thoughts that we may have as we get started thinking about the idea of personal branding. So thank you all for sharing your thoughts. I appreciate your participation. Who I want to be, or who I want people to think who I am. That is actually pretty spot on in terms of kind of what personal branding, may be able to do. So as we transition to the next slide, this is the definition of personal branding as it relates to professional development. So it's a conscious and intentional effort to create and influence public perception of a person. And then get the next one to come up. By positioning them as an authority in their industry, elevating their credibility, differentiating them from competition, to ultimately advance their career, increase their circle of influence, and have a larger impact. So a conscious and intentional effort. It means it's not happening accidentally. We are thinking about our brand and what we can do to promote our brand and its influence in the public perception. So when we're working with others, when we are putting our public face on, an authority in the industry, we're taught to be very self-effacing, to don't brag, to don't toot your own horn. But when it comes to your personal brand, it's things like come salary negotiation at time of hire, having a strong brand positions you in a better place to negotiate for more money in the first place. Or having a really good brand at work when it comes time for things like promotions and pay raises. When it comes time in especially private industry, in times of shrink, when they have to let people go, They don't want to let go the person that they enjoy working with, the person who has a good reputation. And elevating their credibility, differentiating them from the competition, well, isn't that answering the interview question? Why should I hire you and not my 2:00 appointment? So it's helping you stand out from others. Ultimately, to do what? Well, that's circle of influence. So maybe there's a cause that you care about and you ask your friends to support you in your fun run. Well, now you're raising more money for a good cause that's close to your heart. Or maybe you're helping someone else get ahead professionally and you've got a wider network to be able to lean on to help someone else down the road. So there's a lot of things involved in consciously and intentionally creating our brand. Let's learn a little bit more. How do we do this? You may be saying, okay, I know these words. How? It's finding your uniqueness, building a reputation on those things that you want to be known for. And then here's the most difficult part for some of us, allowing ourselves to be known for that. To say, yes, thank you. I acknowledge that you're giving me this opportunity. Or, yeah, definitely, I'm here to help you in that aspect. You want to convey a message that you can capitalize on, but it's not manipulation and it's not lying, and it's how you want others to see you. So there's a quote from the Department of Labor, and I thought this was pretty significant that they're including an element of personal branding even in those transition classes as our military is getting out of the service and into their civilian life. This is directly from the Department of Labor material that they give to our service members who are transitioning. It says personal branding is not about projecting a false image of yourself. It's about understanding what makes you unique, your accomplishments, your many experiences, skills, and talents, and then using those to differentiate yourself, in this case, from other job seekers, but other people in general. So let's try. We're going to find our uniqueness. And one of the easiest ways to do this is to give a compliment to someone else. So I'm going to call up the whiteboard as a share, and we're going to write a compliment on the whiteboard for someone else in the workshop. If you want to use the chat to write the compliment, you absolutely can do that too. So I'm going to have a new share, the whiteboard, and you can use the pen or you can draw it or use the text. And you want to make a compliment for someone else. In my case, I think that Jennifer Lucy, California Workforce, an EDD employee, Jennifer Lucy, she's very optimistic. So let's give it a try. So you want to give a compliment to anyone else. Good. Well, I am not upset that the compliments are all aimed at me right now. That means a lot, but feel free to aim them at anybody you want. Absolutely. Maritza does deliver quality workshops that are very well thought out, and today she looks really professional. And then down in the chat, Derek Collier is very helpful, and Mark Ruscon does have a wonderful speaking voice. And yes, I agree. Derek offered helpful suggestions and finding the notation down in the chat. And Maritza is awesome. And Ray does have an excellent sense of humor. So these are all wonderful ways to kind of get started thinking about, well, where am I in the marketplace right now, right? Awesome. Mark Ruscon is an empathetic mentor. Raymond's profile pic is very professional. It is. Good job. Over in the chat, George Haith has strong leadership qualities. Jennifer is so helpful. Good, awesome. And maybe part of your brand is that you become more consistently a person who gives that verbal feedback to others. It's a wonderful way of raising your own kind of value expressing the value of other people. It's a huge net positive for everybody. One of my favorite expressions is a high tide raises all boats. So in this case, giving words of affirmation and validation to others, it really it matters for your personal brand as well as theirs. Wendy launched CWC on LinkedIn, and she's very generous with her time and her labor commitment to help CWC, and that's going to pay dividends in the future. Excellent. Jennifer Lucy is an amazing trainer and an amazing speaker. And George Haith is a really patient and calm person. Well done. Well, we could do this all night. So I am going to clear off of our wonderful whiteboard. And we're going to go back to our original presentation. All right, so allow me to jump back into our original presentation. And we're going to pick up where we left off now that we've helped find our uniqueness. So I really appreciate you writing those compliments for others on that whiteboard. Now, there are two major ways that research shows we can step forward in our evolution of what our personal brand is. And the first way is to be a collaborator. So what does that mean, being a collaborator? You can actually boost your own reputation by being known for being easy to work with. And we saw that in some of the compliments we paid each other. That's keeping our commitments and helping others achieve their goals. The other way from being a collaborator is to be an influencer. And I don't mean influencer like buy this particular product, not social media influencer, but an influencer at work as a person who helps transform the workplace into the kind of workplace that you would want to be. So it's shaping the opinions of others. So for example, not jumping on the complain train. It's helping us be the change that we want to see. So it's things like, what workshop ideas do you have? I bet you're sitting here right now thinking, oh man, I wish we had a workshop on this thing. Well, I have fantastic news. California Workforce Connection is such an incredible force multiplier for good. If you have an idea for a workshop that maybe you want to do and you want to pair with one of us, or you want to give it a try on your own, designing it, editing it, presenting it, you absolutely have the opportunity. So in this case, we're kind of walking the walk and talking the talk, as personal branding is something that is a big deal for me. And I was able to present this from scratch because George Haith and CWC start with yes. Like, sure, let's do a workshop on personal branding on Tuesday. So it's an opportunity for us to sort of be the change. Pivoting, thinking about your personal branding, you need to know a little bit from social science, particularly this topic right here. And this gets me really jazzed up. Dr. Bruce Tuckman was a revolutionary researcher, popular from the mid-60s to today. And his theory of small group dynamics is really pivotal in understanding work, particularly the small groups and their evolution at work. The steps are forming, norming, storming, performing, and adjourning. And we move from forming into storming, down into norming, and then into performing and into adjourning in a really natural way. And research shows that every group, all small groups, go through these steps, and they all follow the same pattern. The timeline may be different, but that every small group will go through these stages. So the first, forming. Think about a group that you were in recently. Were you asked to join with a few others in a special project at work? Did you have a deliverable? Are you on a project team? Is it something like a sports group or a hobby group? Maybe at home. Did your family join in a small group to accomplish a common goal? So the group gets together. Step one, forming. The leader needs to help us understand why we're doing this, who's doing what, and then why certain people were assigned for certain tasks. Then we get into storming. And storming is very common in new groups. And even if it lasts for 55 seconds or it lasts for months, every small group will have a period of storming. It's conflict or static, confusion or disagreement. And the leaders of these groups, that's you and me, we need to guide that discussion. And then keep in mind Franklin Covey's pivotal sentence that with people, slow is faster. That if we take the time to work through storming instead of just saying it is how it is, or shutting the conflict down, by taking that time to explain everything and make sure everyone has the freshest and most clear information, we're going to transition out of storming and into norming, our next stage. Norming. The conflicts are mostly resolved. It's kind of behind us. We now understand who does what and why. We understand the goals and how we're going to achieve them. For some groups, this happens really quickly. Other groups get stuck and they end up storming for a long time, and then eventually norming tends to come around. Once we've normed, and that could be a pretty brief transit, we get into performing. It's that beautiful feeling of flow, that flow state. And if you're interested in learning more, Dr. Mikhail Csikszentmihalyi, that's that name. He wrote an incredible and really pivotal piece on flow. That idea that when you're in the zone, time seems to just sort of go past, and then you look up from your project and you're nearly complete and it feels fantastic and the group's just gelling and everyone knows what they're doing. That's flow. Part of your personal brand could be that you help flow come more quickly. So performing, the work gets accomplished. Then inevitably something changes, a group member has to leave, the project is accomplished, a new group member joins us, or some other major transit happens, and that's adjourning. So adjourning isn't necessarily that the project is complete. It could be just a major change to the original dynamic, which throws us back into forming. When we are at the end of adjourning, project management tells us you got to take some time, celebrate, and record those lessons learned. And maybe part of your brand is that you're the one who can steward the group, either officially or unofficially, through these stages. Now, thinking about officially and unofficially, that leads us to our next portion of personal branding, talking about power. Now, there's been a lot of research about power at work. Did you know that there are two sources, two founts of power at work? Organizational power and personal power. Let's see what research has to say about these two sources. I'm going to show you a slide that has a lot of data on it. Let's take a minute and read the slide silently to get brushed up on the organizational and personal sources of power. Take a look. So this slide talks a little bit about organizational power that is derived from your actual job title and your personal power that is derived from you as an individual person. And you may have both, organizational power and personal power. You may have only one or the other, or you may feel like you have neither, and that's okay. So what we're going to do now, let's try. We're going to take a look, and I'd like you to respond to this poll. It's completely optional and totally unofficial, but I'd like you to feel free to think about power. So on your screen, I'm launching a poll talking about power. So you want to click on the mouse See if you can't. And one of the answers is absolutely, it's complicated, because power is, talking about power is. Good stuff. So we're thinking about power. Remember, it's totally anonymous. Good. So I'm going to end the poll in 10 more seconds. Right. So we can take a look at the results. So I feel like I have organizational power at work. About 42% of us said yes. And then a couple of us said no. And then almost the same amount who said yes said it's complicated. And that's pretty true. I think of any workplace. I feel like I have personal power at work. 75% of us said yes. And just a few of us said no, or it's complicated. So generally, we are feeling like we have personal power at work, and that's a big deal because that's the one that we can work on. I can't necessarily grant you a managerial position no matter where you work, but it is important that we're feeling at least we have personal power. A lot of people felt like they had both organizational and personal power, at least in most situations. And some of us, yeah, like more than half of us felt that sometimes we feel powerless at work. And isn't that very true? There's a lot of things outside of our control, especially when you work in workforce development and work with people. It is tricky. So I want to thank you for, and I haven't shared or saved the results of that poll. It's gone. It's anonymous, and then now it's disappeared. So thinking about power, we sort of see it as I feel like I have organizational power, personal power, both organizational and personal power, or we're not sure, it's complicated, right? So we saw that, yeah, power is kind of complicated. Now we could have an entire webinar only talking about power, but just as you're working on your personal branding, thinking about your personal brand, you can think about the power that you do have. And that sometimes can help us feel like we have a little bit more control in situations that we feel quite powerless. Well, here's what I can control. I can control me, right? My collaboration, my influence. Remember, it's a concerted and conscious effort to work on those things that we want to be known for. And one of those things that we can be known for is being an effective communicator. So this next section talks about communication. It comes to us from the world of social science and marketing, a little bit of sales and influencing. I've got a video for us about the concept of mirroring. I'm going to fast forward through it, and we're going to start at the minute 51. So let's see this quick video about mirroring. I'm going to hit play, and I'm going to fast forward to minute 51.
Ever come across two people sitting together, exhibiting the same physical posture, deeply engrossed in conversation? You don't have to overhear what they're saying to know that they're in total rapport. I'm Carol Kinsey Goman, author of The Nonverbal Advantage, and I'm talking about mirroring. When a colleague mirrors your body language, it's his way of nonverbally saying that he likes or agrees with you. When done with intent, mirroring can be an important part of developing business relationships and building rapport. Here's how it works. Mirroring starts by observing a person's body posture, then subtly letting your body reflect her position. If her hand or arm is on the table, wait 4 or 5 seconds, then place your hand or arm there too. If she smiles or leans forward, you do the same. You can adjust your vocal tone, volume, or rate of speech to be more like the other person's. When a person is closed off or resistant, the easiest way to increase her comfort level is to use mirroring. Just be careful not to mirror highly negative postures such as both arms and legs crossed or an upper body that's turned away.
So as we think about mirroring, let's get back there. All right. So as we think about mirroring, we want to be thinking about specifically the tiny little edits that we can do in our interpersonal communication with others. And then all of a sudden you're known as a person that it's easy to talk to, that you end up gelling with them, whether that's your superior, your subordinate, your peer, or a client. And having a really effective nonverbals that are validating your verbal communication, it's a huge part of having a successful personal brand. So really, the word personal branding is just having a good rep, being easy to work with. So standing how your fellow speaker is standing, maybe mimicking their nonverbals, but not in a way that's insulting or is harassment. You want to repeat the last few words that they said. So they say, oh, that meeting was terrific. Oh, it was terrific. And they're like, yeah. And then you can talk, well, how, why, what was your favorite part? Or, oh my God, last night was just the pits. Oh, it was the pits. Yeah, it was. And then you can talk about it. So you're keying in on those keywords. And then personally, my big lesson, key takeaway, work on it every day, is to never overtalk, never cut off, and never assume. Let them speak. Whether it's your partner, peers, leaders, clients, people want to feel heard. The blank at the bottom, that's the word feel. It's not enough that they are heard, they have to feel heard. Now, as we continue our kind of subsection on communication, I'm going to introduce you to an incredible person. Her name is Celeste Headlee, and she's a professional interviewer with NPR. She had a TED Talk, and as you know, TED Talks are between 12 and 15 minutes, and we don't have time for that. But I'm going to write her name in the chat at the bottom, Celeste Headlee. And this way, I urge you, Celeste Headlee, I urge you to Google her name. And if you have 15 minutes, you don't even need to watch. You can just listen on your commute, in the restroom. You got a couple of minutes. I urge you to go on your own and watch the complete TED Talk. So this is the abbreviated 3-minute version of the core of what she had to say.
Now, I make my living talking to people, Nobel Prize winners, truck drivers, billionaires, kindergarten teachers, heads of state, plumbers. I talk to people that I like. I talk to people that I don't like. I talk to some people that I disagree with deeply on a personal level, but I still have a great conversation with them. So I have 10 basic rules. I'm going to walk you through all of them, but honestly, if you just choose one of them and master it, you're already going to enjoy better conversations. Number 1, don't multitask. And I don't mean just set down your cell phone or your tablet or your car keys or whatever's in your hand. I mean, be present, be in that moment. Number 2, don't pontificate. If you wanted to state your opinion without any opportunity for response or argument or pushback or growth, write a blog. Number 3, use open-ended questions. Start your questions with who, what, where, when, why, or how. If I ask you, were you terrified? You're going to respond to the most powerful word in that sentence, which is terrified. And the answer is, yes, I was, or no, I wasn't. Try asking them things like, what was that like? How did that feel? Because then they might have to stop for a moment and think about it. And you're going to get a much more interesting response. Number 4, go with the flow. That means thoughts will come into your mind and you need to let them go out of your mind. Number 5, if you don't know, say that you don't know. Err on the side of caution. Talk should not be cheap. Number 6, don't equate your experience with theirs. It's not the same. It is never the same. All experiences are individual. And more importantly, it is not about you. Conversations are not a promotional opportunity. Number 7, try not to repeat yourself. It's condescending and it's really boring. And we tend to do it a lot. Number 8, stay out of the weeds. Frankly, people don't care about the years, the names, the dates, all those details that you're struggling to come up with in your mind. They don't care. What they care about is you. Number 9, this is not the last one, but it is the most important one. Listen. Buddha said, and I'm paraphrasing, if your mouth is open, you're not learning. It takes effort and energy to actually pay attention to someone. But if you can't do that, you're not in a conversation. You're just two people shouting out barely related sentences in the same place. One more rule, number 10, and it's this one: be brief. All of this boils down to the same basic concept, and it is this one: be interested in other people. I keep my mouth shut as often as I possibly can. I keep my mind open, and I'm always prepared to be amazed, and I'm never disappointed. You do the same thing. Go out, talk to people, listen to people, and most importantly, be prepared to be amazed.
All right. So Celeste Headley, an incredible presenter. And I know that doing videos over Zoom, sometimes there's a lag, but I just urge you to do a little bit of research on your own, because I think she's an incredible, incredible interviewer. So thinking about part of personal branding is, again, influencing others. And there's been a ton of research into how we influence each other. And they've discovered 4 key things that we must do if we want to influence other people. So think about jobs where influence is part of the package. So that's car sales and retail and insurance and upselling at a restaurant, adding a warranty or something to a large purchase. But also in workforce development, we're influencing someone else to write a better resume or practice their interview skills. How do we convince our clients to do better in helping us help them? Influencing is actually a huge part of workforce development. If you think about it, we are all collectively salespeople, and we're not necessarily selling a shirt or a vehicle, but we're definitely selling something. So here's how to do it. First thing we want to do is establish credibility. So let me get that into the box. Establishing credibility is about making the case of why you should listen to me. So maybe that is referencing your expertise. At the start of some conversations, you may have to showcase your personal brand, a little bit like George did, being meta, talking about it when you're in it. Being meta for a moment, the start of our presentation, George read you off kind of the list of my recent highlights. Well, that establishes my bona fides, my credibility for leading a workshop on personal branding. So establishing credibility doesn't have to be about bragging. It doesn't have to be inappropriate, but you can reference things like other clients of mine have had success with, or in my previous interviews, I've had success with. So your credibility doesn't have to be showcasing a big long list of check marks, but in a genuine and truthful way of what your expertise is. And we are trained not to be braggy, to be self-effacing, but establishing credibility is a huge part of influencing others. Framing for common ground. Why is this good for both of us? How are we similar and we want to work together for a common goal? And for those of us in workforce development, that's really important for our clients because they may not have a job and we do. So why should I listen to you? We have nothing in common. Well, hey, I have been there before. In the past, when I was unemployed, I remember feeling really self-conscious. What worked for me was this. Maybe, are you feeling self-conscious at all? A little bit of humility, or that framing for common ground, and trying to do it in a sort of a likable, really human way. Providing evidence. So it's, the last year I've seen this number of people get hired, or this is why this works. And you want to, if you have something big coming up and you have to try to convince someone, maybe you're going for a promotion, or maybe you're doing salary negotiation, or maybe you're helping your clients do that. What are the pain points that you can solve? And solving pain is a huge part of your personal brand. Connecting emotionally is the last one of the four. So it's things like demonstrating that you genuinely care, asking open-ended questions, applying all the good stuff that we just heard from Celeste Headley, matching their tone, their pace, their emotions, maybe mirroring their nonverbal communication. So there are common mistakes, though, that a lot of people make in influencing others. And I think that these common mistakes go back to our first slide of the night, which was, what do you think about when you think about my personal brand? And people who lay it on too thick, those are the people who are doing all the wrong things in their personal brand. Maybe it's too much aggression, or resisting to the win-win, failing to establish your credibility, or framing for what's in it for both of us, not connecting emotionally, or assuming agreement after only the first meeting, particularly when it's an ongoing project or something that you may have to have 2 or 3 meetings before you're getting the other person on board. So we're applying this concept of personal branding, not just at work, but in our entire lives. There are a couple of key concepts I'd like you to take away from this section. Establish. And down in the chat, do you remember what the establish was? Give it a type. Establish blank. So I'll give you a second to type it in. I'll give you a hint. It was establish your credibility. Okay. The next one was frame for blank ground. Of course. Yep. Common ground. Absolutely. Thank you, Estella. Blank evidence. Yeah. Provide. Exactly. And then the last one was connect. Yep. Emotionally. Good. Thank you, everybody. I really appreciate you didn't leave me hanging there. That's your personal brand. As facilitators yourself, I know that you know how tricky it is. So these are all the core concepts that social science says that if we want to influence others, these are the actionable things you can take away and say, okay, if I'm starting working on my personal brand and I kind of want to think, what do I want to do? These are some tangible, actual things you can start doing in your communication with others. Now, as we pivot into the world of sales. So sales has a lot to talk about in terms of personal brand, because often you're buying not just the item or the object, but you're buying the person. So allow me to clear off the annotations. And here is a wonderful resource. It's a very, very skinny book. You could read it in about 20 minutes from an award-winning salesperson called David Cook. And so he's a huge sales guru and he has a huge online presence, David Cook. He says the key takeaways from how to be a great salesperson by Monday morning is, how does a person say goodbye? How they say goodbye at the end of your encounter is how they really feel. It's where they drop the mask and you're able to see their real self for just that moment. Are they enthusiastic? Okay, goodbye. Is it bitter and resentful? Okay, goodbye. Is it neutral? Okay, goodbye. Are they distracted? Were they distracted the entire time? Yeah, okay, goodbye. How a person says goodbye at the end of your encounter is how they truly feel about the encounter and likely how they truly feel about you. So I will always enthusiastically say goodbye to you. When you set a meeting, maybe you want to talk with your boss about something. Maybe you need to set something up with a peer. List the date and time that you want second. So if you know yourself and your daily energy rhythm, maybe you are a lark and you are sharp at 9 a.m. and you are a dragon sack of potatoes at 3 p.m. So you want to have these important meetings around 9 a.m. Pick that second time slot. So it could look like this. Hey, I was wondering if we could get together and talk about the proposal. I've got Monday at 3 and Tuesday at 9 available. Always set the one that you want. Say it second. People are more likely to pick the second window that you give them. It's just a truism. My third and favorite is know when to stop talking. You got to realize when you sold them. And remember, this is sales techniques in the rest of our entire lives. So it's not just know when to stop talking and I'm on a car sales lot or in a retail environment, but just in general, know when enough is enough. And then use their name often in conversations. People's names are powerful totem that pulls them into the conversation. I urge you to try this little experiment. If you have a significant other or a partner, the next time that you say, I love you, and usually you'll say babe or honey, in a tender moment, say, I love you, and then their name, and see how differently it lands. Often it's a more intimate experience when you tack their name on instead of babe or honey or sweetie. And then the final one, how to be a great salesperson by Monday morning, is if I can get you to say yes once, I can probably get you to say yes a second or third time. So his technique, David Cook, says, ask them for a tiny, tiny favor. It's a little bit on the border of manipulation, I feel. So this is the one that I'm not doing when I'm building my personal brand, because I don't want my personal brand to be about manipulation. I want it to be about genuine human connection. But try this. Ask them for something small, like a stick of gum, or can they pass you something? Can they help you carry something? Ask them for a small favor. And then if you follow it up with a larger favor, because they've already said yes to you, they're more likely to say yes to you again. So I'm going to be aware of this one in the world of sales. And the next time a salesperson asks me to do something tiny, I might be aware that this might be a sales technique. All right. So we're shifting gears away from the world of sales and thinking for a moment as we think holistically of our entire personal brand. What is our social media presence doing for our brand? And this is particularly true of our peers or ourselves or our clients who are job seekers. Is your LinkedIn supporting, endorsing, and raising up your branding effort? Is it torpedoing your brand effort, or is it silent? And you may think, well, I'm mid-career, I'm not going anywhere, I'm well established in my current role, but you never know what opportunities might be around the next corner. You could be a state employee and maybe you're going for a different state federal position. You could pivot into a completely new opportunity that maybe networking provides for you. So you have to make sure that your online, especially your LinkedIn social media, is supporting and raising and validating the effort you're doing in your personal brand. So I urge you to Google yourself regularly. And by Googling yourself regularly, you can check both your Google and Google image. And if you have a LinkedIn, this is great news because LinkedIn spends a lot of money on something called SEO. I'm going to write that in the chat. SEO. It stands for Search Engine Optimization. LinkedIn spends a lot of money that if you have an active LinkedIn account and you Google your own first name and last name, your LinkedIn profile is what comes up first. LinkedIn is aggressive in its SEO for its active members. So maybe there's someone else with your same name. Maybe that person with your same name has made some questionable decisions in the past. Or maybe you've got some social media that you don't want to come up first. People who know me well know that I'm a steampunk cosplayer. I absolutely am. I'm really proud of it. It's part of my brand, but it's not necessarily what I want to come up first when you Google me. So I'm very active to make sure that my LinkedIn and those results come up first, maybe before a picture of me dressed like Game of Thrones comes up. So is your social media helping, hurting, or silent? Now, our final pivot of the night is thinking about win-win, building a strong and positive brand. And those who know Franklin Covey and the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, the one that helps personal branding, maybe the most of all of them, is that concept of think win-win. So I've got a quick little video for us that recaps what the 7 habits of highly effective people are and how you can maybe incorporate some of these in your own personal brand efforts. Let's take a look. Right on. This is where thinking win-win especially. So how do we build our brand? We want to be a collaborator. We want to be easy to work with. We want to be flexible, keeping our promises and our commitments, offering to help in really specific ways. So you're not just saying, however you need my help, I'm here, but let's be really specific and take some of the work off of them, of having them to decide what it is you need help with. But it's, hey, can I specifically help you with this part of this project? And then helping others reach their goals, which improves their goals, their success, and then reflects positively on you. And it really is about doing for others. Let's talk for a moment about the California Workforce Connection and how incredible that they are as an organization. They've got a lot of different programs, and dues for managers for the state are actually free. Rank and file is only $4. And for other state associated friends, it's only $98 a year, which is a really, really good savings if you think about all the different value that's involved in the CWC. So the website there is californiaworkforceconnection.org. And this comes to the end of our presentation. I've got a quick poll for us, the final one of our day. I'd like to know your favorite part. Was it learning about the sales tips and interpersonal communication? Was it about mirroring and body language? Was the concept of organizational and personal power? Those 4 steps to influencing others and the common pitfalls? Was it the Celeste Headley TED Talk? Was it Franklin Covey and the idea of the 7 habits of highly effective people? Right on. I'll leave the poll up for another about 10 seconds. Nine, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So looking at those results, it was the sales tips at 36%, mirroring 43, 21%, the organizational versus personal power as it relates to our personal branding, the 4 steps to influencing others. Our TED Talk with Celeste Headley was 50%. And then thinking about win-win, especially as one of the 7 habits from Franklin Covey, coming in at 14%. So thank you for that. I always leave a little bit of time at the end of every workshop. I'm going to hit the stop recording button, and that way if you have any questions, we can address them. But it was my sincere pleasure to be able to spend just about an hour talking about personal branding with you guys tonight.